Hello, good morning everyone. Re-recording my talk on Game of Thrones because the other one was I recorded in too high quality, my computer slowed down, my voice got messed up. So anyway, just wanted to skip forward my thoughts on the TV series and the books. I've started to read, pretty much finished Game of Thrones. Then I'm going to move into season 2 or Clash of Kings. Then I've got all other books in the series to read, so it's going to take me a while, but definitely when I'm reading these books, it makes me appreciate like how much better it is to read a book over watching a TV show or a movie in terms of certain things. I mean, mainly getting inside the characters' heads and what they're thinking, because when you're watching in a TV show, you can't really do that unless you have some sort of like, you know, like a voiceover or like with an echo or some. Basically, you can't do it without coming across a little bit cheesy. With George R.R. Martin, he actually each chapter is a perspective from a different character, so that's even more. Even the way the story is written for each character is sort of like for example, if it's Bran or Sansa, it'll be very sort of simple, superficial, childlike thinking, as opposed to Eddard, where everything's very analytical. You know, he's analyzing everything with integrity, blah blah blah. So it really helps to get inside the characters' heads. So definitely got into Game of Thrones when I heard people talking about it. I mean, it was on HBO, so already that's like, you know, what can you say? HBO has produced some crazy stuff. You know, Oz, of course, The Wire. So getting into, I mean, I was just, I felt like as soon as you watch the show, already from episode 1, it feels like you've known the characters for quite a long time. And I refer to this as the Wire syndrome because that's the way I think about it. And what I mean by that is like, just from a very short amount of time, these characters are so well written that it feels like you already know their personality, and it feels like you could put them into any other situation and you could get some sort of baseline of how they would actually react to that situation. And I think that's what makes really the Song of Ice and Fire series fantastic, is that the main thing here, apart from your emotion and your story of course, but the main sort of driving force here is of course the characters. The characters are amazing. I mean, just the richness and the tapestry of Westeros that George R.R. Martin has created is crazy. I mean, I think one of these blogs says on the back something like, you know, this is the 12 Caesars of, you know, like fantasy fiction or something like that. And it really is, he's really going for something epic. Basically the more the detail you go into, the more crazy and interesting the story is, because the world is sort of like down to the finest minutia. He has something to say about that in terms of like the food and like the stories within the stories that, you know, the grandmother tells to the kids and stuff like that is fantastic. I think the way that George R.R. Martin has written the series is sort of, I mean, that's the thing, like, just say like you finish season 2 and you haven't read the rest of the book, so you haven't read like what is it, A Storm of Swords or season 3, you could just sit down with the way the characters are, what we know from the characters now from season 1 and season 2 and what has happened in the past, and you could automatically think of like, you know, like a million different sort of like directions that the plot could go in. Like there's just so many sort of like ways that this could go down. I mean, the main one is you got Joffrey, and you got Joffrey who has, you know, ended up facilitating the death of Eddard Stark, and then you got Arya. I mean, what's going to happen there? What's going to happen with King Joffrey? What's going to happen with Jon Snow, who's like the, you know, outsider, the bastard? There's just so many sort of ways these plots can weave together. And another very interesting thing is just seeing the characters interact, like seeing like Tyrion interact with Sansa. I found fascinating, and the fact that these are sort of different houses or enemies per se. Like you got like you got the Lannisters and House Stark, but then every once in a while they put the differences aside just to sort of interact or communicate with each other. That is just amazing. It reminds me of The Wire, where you've got Herc and you've got all these guys off the street, and they take 2 or 3 minutes out to show a scene where they're mucking around with the computer software, and they're sort of joking around by making like the perfect girl. It's like, oh, make her ass a little bit bigger, stuff like that. I think that sort of humanization of characters in the fiction world is what makes stories really great. And as I referred to in previous videos, before we are who we are, we're all human beings. So anything which demonstrates a human side to characters, whether it be fantasy or fiction, that is where the money's at. And I think that is what makes stories great, because our brains goes, oh yep, what's that, I can relate to that, searches our brains for like a similar situation which has happened to us, and there's our emotional connection to the characters. So for example, Jon Snow, if you've ever felt like, you know, you've been like an outsider or the underdog or the outcast, or you've been pushed aside, your brain's going to connect with that. Same with Tyrion Lannister. If you've ever felt like angry or pissed off, well, that's, you know, King Joffrey for you. So there's many sort of characters to relate to here, and I think that's a very important part of storytelling in general. One of my upcoming videos, probably my next one I'll put out, is storytelling in general, and why I consider it to be one of the most important things ever. And you'll get to see where I'm coming from with this. As you know, most of my videos, they don't sort of like go into detail scene by scene. They're more like overarching principles, because that's the way I think about storytelling, and that's what's helped me personally, from where I'm coming from, to get into fandom more and more as I go throughout these stories, books, movies, fantasy, whatever. So season 3 is going to be broken up into 2 seasons, I think, because the book is 2 books, so I'm keen to see how that goes. I heard that there's many alterations already from, especially, well, book 1 is pretty much, as I'm reading it, like, it's very similar, like, and that's another thing, when I'm reading Game of Thrones, I can't help but think of these characters, the way that I see their actors' faces now when I'm reading the book. Like, I can't sort of pull myself away from them. So I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but that's what's actually happening. What else? There's just I mean, Daenerys Targaryen, and like the whole, you know, there's so many pieces placed here. It's just incredible. Like that Jaime Lannister has killed, like, is it King Aerys, the Mad King, I believe they refer to him as, which was the previous, you know, Targaryen on the throne, and then King Robert came on there. What's going to happen if Daenerys ever met up with Jaime? Like, and the whole wild card of just having a non sort of like fantastical world, but at the same time just throwing the spanner in the works of having these dragons, actually like baby dragons there. It's like, okay. And not only that, you've got the Whites, or the White Walkers, up in the north. It's like, and that's the real sort of interesting thing, is that the White Walkers and all these things, the way that season 2 ended with Sam sort of hiding behind the rock. These guys like don't really care about all these games of Thrones being played out. They just, you know, they're sort of like, they have their own agenda. Yeah, they're not going to sit down and discuss politics or wage wars. They're just going to like obliterate everything, I'm assuming. So I think that's a really sort of interesting thing. Like when these guys actually hit, you know, the main cities or whatever, are these different houses which were once fighting actually going to come together for a common good? It's, you know, reminds me of The Walking Dead. Like, you know, like if there was a zombie apocalypse and you disliked someone, you'll probably put your differences aside just to survive against getting eaten alive by a zombie. So I think that yes, season 2 was sort of slightly less better than season 1. I think someone mentioned it's because the character focus was sort of not as intense or not as sort of present as season 1. But nevertheless, I thought it was pretty good. I love I mean, the main thing, the whole Tyrion, like Joffrey acting like, basically when Joffrey's on the throne, confident, arrogant, you know, he's got like all his, you know, his faculties online to boss people around. But when it comes to actually like, you know, having the power to actually wage war and actually go out there and sort of like boss his troops around, it took Tyrion Lannister, you know, as small as he is, to deliver such a, you know, like you know, inspiring speech to actually effectively win the war. And now you've got Tywin, his father, you know, riding in on the horse, and I especially liked how the horse took a dump in the middle of the court or whatever as he was riding in, like, you know, like, this is my town, I can do what I want. And of course Joffrey giving these gifts of different provinces to Littlefinger, and of course Varys the Spider, who, I mean, those two are just very sort of, as much as they don't have combat skills for shit, they could manipulate the hell out of anyone. And we all know that, especially given this title of the series, Game of Thrones, and half of the series is about political manipulation, those two main characters have got the game down to a T. So we know those are characters we have to look out for. You've got Daenerys Targaryen, of course, and what's the other guy, Sir Jorah Mormont, who, you know, sort of like the protective father figure who, you know, obviously loves Khaleesi on some level, but nevertheless knows that, you know, Khal Drogo, you know, her moon and sun and stars or whatever, is always going to be her love. You've got Robb, you've got Theon Greyjoy, who is just this, you know, bit of a crazy tyrant, not as evil as Joffrey, but nevertheless a little bit too ambitious for his own good. You've got Arya, who is the tomboy, who is very, almost like a peasant girl's head, and just happened to be born into the Stark family. You've got Sansa, who is very naive and stupid and simplistic to a fault, to the point where she ends up liking Joffrey, and then now only she's beginning to realize, you know, what actually is happening, and, you know, like the reality of the situation. You've got Jon Snow, who is the bastard. You've got Bran, who is, you know, currently he's not walking, so that's another factor. It's like, okay, I'm guessing, like, from a storytelling perspective, you don't introduce something like that only to have him to have him be a cripple for the rest of the series, because that has not got as strong an impact as all of a sudden him standing up in one scene, walking, and then killing someone with a sword, for example. So I can sort of intuit where that plot piece is going to play out. Who else have you got? I mean, there's just so many. You got, of course, Cersei. We got Lord Eddard Stark, who was, you know, one of the. I mean, everyone loved him. Like, how could you not like that character? Like, just no matter what, he was just his integrity was like sharp as a tack. It was just amazing. And then seeing his head get chopped off. I read this article, by the way. Apparently, like, yeah, George Bush's head was digitally input into the. No, they used George Bush's head and they wrapped it up and they turned it away on one of the head spiking backdrops. And now that HBO had to go and edit out George Bush's head out of all of them, so I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah, there's just a lot of characters there. Robb Stark going with this nurse, which is a bad idea, I think. Lady Catelyn, who, you know, as good as a heart she has, a little bit too hot-headed for her own good. I mean, just releasing Jaime Lannister last season. Then we've got that massive tall lady, I can't remember what her name was, you know, just sort of pledging her fealty to Lady Catelyn. You got Littlefinger's like relationship with Lady Catelyn and Sansa, how, like you say, you know, you remind me of your mother when you know, when she was young, sort of creeping Sansa a little bit there. You got you know, like Tyrion, as I've already mentioned. Just the way these characters are sort of very three-dimensional is the plot devices which are actually going to drive the story forward to, you know, have some fantastic storylines ahead. And so I think that, yeah, I mean, pretty much everyone should watch Game of Thrones. I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you probably watch Game of Thrones. If not, yeah, it's been classified as a adult version of Lord of the Rings, and with the amount of, yeah, you know, sex and violence, you could understand very quickly why. But I'm nevertheless very keen for season 3. I'm trying to read these books as quick as possible. However, it takes up a lot of time. But when I do sit down and read it, his writing style is enjoyable to read. Some books feel like a chore to get through. His choice of words are great. They're diverse. The way he describes food is, you know, makes me hungry. And yeah, the fighting scenes are sort of very visceral and sort of very sort of in your face. So he doesn't mess around when it comes to the, you know, swords, hitting armor, and piercing blood, guts, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, Game of Thrones, to sum up, yeah, excellent series. Season 2 faltered a little bit. Nevertheless, just the amount of characters and the way that every character feels so three-dimensional is just incredible, and it's a part of what I like the show. And having such a wide spectrum of characters to sort of connect to, relate to, go on a journey with, is what makes Game of Thrones one of the best TV series out there at the moment. And I really hope that it doesn't get cut or cancelled or anything, and that we get to see all these stories' resolution, for better or for worse, in this Game of Thrones. Well, that's it. Okay, thanks guys. I'll re-up this video on the page, and yeah, not much else to say except take care.